This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on a choice, but get it on. Welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. Mark Garrigus is in parts unknown. New York, where are you?
Southampton, the Capri Hotel.
Southampton.
Which is apparently the happening spot to be.
Well, you'll be happy to know that as soon as we wrap, I'm going to hurry off to the airport to go to Denver. But I'm not flying coach, Mark. I'm flying Coach Plus.
Oh, did the promoter give you a little upgrade?
No, what ends up happening is they probably provide X amount of dollars for travel, and then you got to figure out whether you want to, how much of that you want to eat up with an upgrade versus, put in your pocket for the.
It's kind of like
home.
A per diem
Yes.
for an athlete. They get the per diem. They can either eat or they can do something else.
So cases that are on your mind, I talked to Gary on the ride in about some stuff. He has a particular sort of insane story about a boating accident, a homicide, that he was telling me about, on the ride in, and we can get into that. But what's on your mind?
I was thinking about, Weinstein, this morning because I found it ironic that apparently they're ready to extradite him from here in New York to LA. And I thought how ironic, because I just got the presiding judge's order declaring the judicial emergency to be extended in the courts. So that, as I've talked about endlessly, the speedy trial rights, things of that nature, have all been extended as of this morning when we're doing this, at the same time that we're going to drag Harvey to LA, I guess, to try him, even though I don't know how they're going to try him if the emergency order just got extended. So it's just a wonderful thing as a taxpayer to watch, and as somebody who's in the criminal justice system to watch.
Well, the emergency order extended. I'm in L.A. The Clippers are going to play tonight, and they're playing to a full capacity crowd for, the first time in forever. And then I heard Cuomo doing a presser today in New York, and he was talking about New York having the lowest COVID positive and test. So New York is open and LA is open. So then why the extension? So if the arenas are open and the restaurants are open, why are we extending the emergency order?
I'm very confused about the whole thing. I wish somebody would explain to me why the emergency order would be extended and people would be sitting presumably in custody without bail and not getting a speedy trial. I just don't understand what's happening. I mean, the California Supreme Court extended their time to consider the Restaurant Association and engine companies' request to have them weigh in on the fact that the county had absolutely no evidence to shut outdoor dining. That just got denied. So now the only place left is the U.S. Supreme Court. And, it's interesting because there's been a couple of decisions this week by the U.S. Supreme Court in cases that were somewhat unexpected. One being in terms of the upholding of the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, and the Philadelphia case on the discrimination or supposed discrimination or not on LGBTQ. And I just find it ironic that the only cases, or it seems like the only time we're dealing with the First Amendment seems to be in religious cases right now. And I don't get it. I mean, you talked about New York and LA. The thing that New York and LA have in common, they both have vaccination rates that are good, but not spectacular as compared to other places. But what you can show is a direct correlation between when they both opened up outdoor dining and other outdoor activities and the dropping off of the incidence of COVID and everything else. And I don't understand why that's such a secret. I don't understand why we can't deal with that. Why can't we talk about it? And then it leads into another story that I think you're interested in, the Fauci Zuckerberg communications. Have you been following this?
Yeah, I actually kind of prompted Gary on that, which is I don't get why there's redactions in those emails. If he's talking to Zuckerberg, why can't we hear what they were talking about? Why? I don't know what the legal motivation is for redactions. I mean, I understand certain things are sensitive and they're secure and they have to do with secrets that our government would like to keep from other governments. But what about why? What's the legal basis for redacting a conversation between a big tech guy and Anthony Fauci?
Well, Gary's going to put it up. Yeah, right there. You can see. Sometimes I understand the redaction on, as you see in the middle of that, the email addresses for people, if it's a private email address or if it's somebody that's going to be exposed to every lunatic in the world, you emailing them.
Yeah.
If there's personal identifying information, I can understand the redaction there. That's standard operating procedure. You can't put basically a document on the screen, even in a court case, if you haven't redacted social security number, dates of birth, things like that.
That's up there with even TMZ has to tile out the license plate when the celebrity's pulling out of Spagos. Like, we all get that part of the redaction, but what about the content part of the redaction?
Right. I don't understand this one here on the last paragraph. And then, Gary, there's another one where there's a substantial amount that has been redacted, and it does not appear to me to be a something that would just be an identifying feature. It looks like a whole conversation or a whole subject matter was redacted. Generally, the law is on these kinds of requests that if there's something that implicates national security or something like that, you could certainly do that. But as you can see there, when he says, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4 lines are all redacted. That that I think gives people an excuse to speculate, if you know what I mean.
So to give some context, the one we're looking at right here is from Mark Zuckerberg to Tony Fauci, and at the end he says finally, and it's a whole paragraph that's blacked out. And in the other email that we were looking at earlier, they are referencing this email. This email has been forwarded along to a bigger group, and it says, what's even bigger is his offer too, and then they black it out. So the offer is presumably in this email that you're looking at now, and then the other people referencing how big the offer is and how great it is in the other email.
Yeah. So my question is, who's in charge of redactions? Because I guarantee if Jim Jordan was in charge of redactions, we'd be reading what's on this email right now. So I always just figure out whose camp is the redaction person in, and I'm assuming he's in Fauci's camp, but I don't know, and I don't know that they even provide who does the vetting for redactions.
Usually, there's going to be a PIO, public information officer. There's also, if these were released pursuant to FOIA, that can be there can be an information officer in the mix there as well. So it's an interesting exercise, and you wonder at a certain point. And I understand the concern. Obviously, if there's somebody in the private sector who's writing to someone on the government payroll, why is there redaction? What's the purpose of the redaction? Who are we protecting?
Well, obviously, the conspiracy theorist in me says big tech they basically parroted everything that Fauci said, and anyone who came along with a alternate theory about where the virus may have emanated from, like the lab theory, or had something good to say about some therapeutics, hydroxychloroquine or whatever, whatever someone else said that would have defied what Fauci said was pulled off the platform that Zuckerberg runs. So that feels a little suspicious to me. It feels like a little more than a coincidence that these two, it's basically saying, it's like you have one guy who's got the product and the other guy who's got the billboard, and the guy who's got the product is talking to the guy with the billboard, and coincidentally, all the stuff that ends up on the billboard is all products that this guy's selling, and no alternative products. Those are being pulled off of the billboard. So, again, what to me in this whole thing, it's the smoking gun to me, whether it's CNN or New York Times or Facebook or Twitter or any of these, head of the CDC or any of these guys, is why weren't they agnostic about a lot of this stuff? Why were they so aggressively going in one direction with no information? That's the smoking gun to me. Why if you said a year and a half ago or a year ago this thing came from a lab from Wuhan, why wasn't big tech neutral on that subject or agnostic on that subject? Why did they know that wasn't so when nobody knew that wasn't so?
I read an interesting interview with a scientist who was one of the original ones who speculated that when he was looking at the genome, that there was a very small percentage that did not appear to have been or could have come from nature, and had put that out there, I believe, in January of 2020. And then as he got more information, and he was kind of under siege, he changed that opinion and said it was, and to his credit in the interview that I read, at least, which was apparently lightly edited for length and content, but once again, you can't get the raw data. But he says, well, that's part of what the scientific method is. The scientific method is you collect data, you have a discussion, you get to a point where you have peer review, and then you change your hypothesis or your thesis. Well, the irony of that is exactly what you just said. The irony is that we're not letting people do that. We're kind of directing what their thesis can be, and whether we can evolve or whether the discussion is allowed to have a back and forth. You see what I mean in terms of the irony here, that the very scientific method that is being described and exalted, which I've always had great reverence for, is precisely what is being manipulated. The method of what data do you get? Who's giving you the data? Is it taken down? Is it? Are there ways in which the information you're getting is being manipulated? That's a scary prospect, I think.
I think the overall takeaway in the scary prospect department is, even if you're a virologist or a scientist or clinician or doctor, whatever, if you had an alternate theory about masks or about hydroxychloroquine or about other therapeutics or about where the virus emanated from, if you had any theories that didn't comport with big tech's sort of agenda, you were labeled misinformation, false allegation, and then essentially you were disgraced. You were essentially called a liar, and that we're going to have to pull your stuff off because you were lying. That's a little tough on the reputation of a virologist or scientist or a doctor, but that a theme emerged. That's the scary part. It wasn't that people differed with the theory. It's that the people who were in charge of the PA system in the town square unplugged the microphones of the guys who had alternate theories than the ones big tech decided to run with, which, by the way, turned out to be wrong. That's the great part of it.
The idea that somehow you're going to say, I'm not going to consider, or I'm not going to hear, or I'm not going, it's actually more arrogant than that. It's, I'm not going to let others hear of these alternative views, is to me antithetical to what the First Amendment is. And the First Amendment is supposed to be, I mean, traditionally, if you look at it, it was designed for core political speech and protection of the religious liberty. However, you can't just decide certain things are okay, other things aren't okay. I mean, that's not what the First Amendment is.
Well, also, a couple of things. They're also all over the road. So if there's a bunch of information on Hunter Biden's laptop, they're like, well, we can't run that because we don't know where that information came from or how it was gotten. But if somebody leaks a bunch of records from the IRS about rich guys not paying taxes, they're happy to run those stories. So which is it?
Well,
they're both potentially legally received. Why the double standard?
Well, it's interesting because Ben has a client who is retired Secret Service, who has demanded on the Hunter Biden issue that some of the quotes or texts or things that were included in an article were just made up. And I think there was a clarification that was issued and a pseudo retraction that was issued. The fact remains, though, that your point is and people may not know this story, I believe it was ProPublica, which is a group that does investigations, somehow got leaked a series of billionaires' tax returns. And the tax returns showed that a number of billionaires paid no taxes for a number of years. And I believe that there was done, or I would assume that was done, someone in the chain leaked it, and that was illegal, is the premise that you and I are working from. If that's the case, people don't have a problem with that, but they do seem to have a problem with any other information if it doesn't fit within their ideological kind of lane.
Well, here's an interesting semi-abstract thought, and I'll argue for it and I'll argue against it, which is I believe most all this happened just because, as Mike August would say, it's an election year. This is how this is how COVID got weaponized and politicized. But here's a hypothetical. How big a campaign contribution did big tech make to the Biden campaign by cherry picking all the stuff about Trump versus Hunter Biden versus the lab leak versus no lab leak? You know what I mean? Think about the contribution, if you could even translate that into dollars, how that would help the campaign of one candidate versus the other. I mean, it literally could have swung the election. Now, at some point, we're going to have to consider it a contribution, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're talking about something that is traditionally referred to as in kind. And for those of you who don't know, I will refer you back so that we can cover that it works both ways. Don't think it's just one side or the other. Remember, in the 2016 election, Facebook, there was a great deal of information that was garnered and used very skillfully by Jared Kushner on Facebook to target, to the point, geo-target voters and things of that nature. And they were obviously, Facebook at least, was a party to that, was manipulated. And Facebook here in 2020 for that election can be manipulated by the other side. That's one of the things I always like to point out is, just because today it's happening to your enemy does not mean tomorrow it can't happen to you. So understand that no matter which side of the aisle you're on or which side of the ideological split you're on, understand what is happening here. And that's not abstract when you talk about it. Develop that theory for a second for me.
Well,
what you're saying is that is there an in-kind contribution by basically by kind of tilting the game, so to speak?
Well, a couple things. So I believe either candidate can use any tech platform to the best of their ability, geo-targeting, whatever it is, they're allowed to do that. Both directions, both sides. Let's see who has the best, let's see who has the best and the brightest running their online campaign and running their, tech campaign. That's perfectly fine. My pushback is when the actual platform starts picking and choosing what stuff they like and what stuff they dislike from one side or the other. Now, you can say, well, they have some responsibility. If one side says the other side is a crack addict and a prostitute and it's just a bold-faced lie, then maybe there's some responsibility in the platform to police that. But when it comes to things like the lab leak, they have no information that would suggest that did happen or didn't happen. That is clearly a bias for one candidate or the Hunter Biden laptop. That's something that exists. That's a story that's real. They had no business pulling down the New York Post, I think, shutting down their Twitter account and calling it, fake news. That was clearly a bias. So you have to remain neutral and let both sides go at it and may the best person win. On the other hand, the Los Angeles Times endorses a candidate every year. Now, I don't know the difference exactly, like in the eyes of the law, between the Los Angeles Times and Twitter. But the Los Angeles Times comes out and says, we're endorsing Joe Biden. And then you can read the news with that knowledge. You know what I mean? So then when you read a fluff piece on Biden, you'll know it's coming from the newspaper that endorsed Joe Biden. And when you read a hit piece on whoever he's running against, then you'll know that same news source is against that person. At least you walk in with that knowledge. My feeling is Twitter, Facebook, and these places, they're claiming to be the New York Times. They're claiming to be the Los Angeles. I mean, what they're claiming is we're a neutral platform and a news source, but they're clearly not. And my feeling is they should just declare major. They should just go, we're a private company. We endorse Joe Biden.
Well, the LA Times is an interesting example because they will come out and endorse, and it's a sought after, or used to be a sought after endorsement. I don't know that it necessarily is anymore. if you talk to Drew, every time they do a hit piece on Drew, he says it's okay. Nobody reads it anyway. But they have an editorial pitch. They have, which, to some degree is determined by who the owner is. When Sam Zell took over, the Chicago-based owner of the Tribune Company, they had a view that was different than what they've got right now. I mean, I think anybody who would take a look at the LA Times would be hard-pressed to say that they aren't rooting for Gavin Newsom in the recall election. I think it's I think that's an objective fact. I think they've come out and they've staked out a position that it's a waste of taxpayer money to have the recall, and that he should, we shouldn't do it, whatever it is, in so close to period of time to when he would have been up for re-election anyway. And then to do that along with mentioning Drew, a hit piece on Drew, what I thought was a hit piece on Drew, almost side by side on the website of the LA Times. I mean, you saw that, you remember that. That gives you pause. Once again, it comes back to the thing. I'd like to read or get data that is mostly stripped of your agenda or your bias, as much as it's humanly possible.
I've always said, if you're the New York Times or the LA Times, why would you make that proclamation and then expect half the country to consume your information and with some sort of open mind? It's really a bizarre. I know it's a ritual. I know it's been going on for time immemorial. There's certain. I don't know. The New York Times has not endorsed a Republican president for 72 years or something. Like, it's crazy. But what I'm saying is I want to think of you as an umpire. And I don't want the umpire walking out onto the baseball diamond saying, I'm a huge fan of the Mariners. Anyway, Mariners, you're playing the Cubs. Play ball. And then don't worry, I'll just call balls and strikes. That seems antithetical to me. You're a news outlet. You shouldn't have a favorite team.
What's interesting about that is the famously Justice John Roberts, who in his confirmation hearing had said, a justice on the Supreme Court should be calling balls and strikes, right?
Right.
And now I was reading something this morning where some of the legal scholars, given the two decisions that I referenced before this week, are saying that they're now people who talk about the court as a 6-3 conservative court are missing what has happened this week, which is it's really kind of a 3-3-3 court, meaning the more recent Roberts, Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett are in one group. You're getting Gorsuch, you're getting what's his name, and Alito in the other, and then Kagan and the other two, Breyer and whoever. So 3-3-3 is a different configuration. And part of, I think, the genius of the Chief Justice is he doesn't try to make sweeping decisions. He tries to do it incrementally so that there is some kind of trust in the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think that's basically what your point is. How do you have trust in the media outlets or the social media outlets if it looks like they're rooting, as you always say, I love it, they're rooting for one team or another?
I agree with me. All right, I'll set this one up. Gary's got a crazy story out of
South Carolina. We teased it on Beyond Reasonable Doubt.
Yeah. Also, I am curious your thought. It came up and it went away. It was all the rage 3 months ago, the whole court packing thing, speaking of the Supreme Court and what's affectionately known as court packing. I'm curious your thoughts on that. First, I'll tell you about Geico. Do you own, do you rent your home? Well, you do one or the other, and I bet you work hard, too. I'll tell you something that's easy. Bundling with Geico. Geico makes it easy to take your homeowners or your renters insurance and put it along with your automotive policy. And again, it's a good thing because you have so much to do around the house already. Why not save some time, save some money? Go to geico.com, get a quote, see just how much you could be saving when you go to geico.com and get your bundle on. So quickly, thoughts on court packing?
Court packing, it reminds me of when people and the current filibuster discussion and everything else, be careful what you wish for. The idea of expanding the court, and there's nothing sacrosanct about 9, except that's where we've been. But inevitably, what happens is exactly what I was just talking about. Instead of this being a monolithic behemoth of 6, it's turned out that there's now differences, and it really is 3-3-3. And for all of the Democrats who've been basically clamoring for Breyer to retire, I'm not so sure that if Breyer wasn't there, that you would have had the holding of the Affordable Care Act this week. So I just think people are too short-sighted and want kind of an immediate gratification as opposed to understanding the dynamics. Most of the justices who get appointed understand their role there. I mean, there's obvious exceptions on either end of the spectrum, but I just think it's a bad idea to expand the number of justices on the court.
All right, Gary, now your story that was teased on Beyond a Reasonable Doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty wild one out of South Carolina. This family, the Murdaughs, have held significant power in the area of South Carolina that they're from. It's a group of counties in South Carolina known as the Low Country, and the Murdaughs for 87 years have let's see here. For 87 years, 3 generations, one of the Murdaugh family members has served as a solicitor of the 14th Circuit.
That's like the Carollas of North Hollywood.
There you go.
We've had district selectmen going back to the Mayflower.
Sure.
My dad runs that down.
Well, maybe not past 87 years, because 87 years by the same family is the longest in the history of the United States.
Wow.
Now,
it's just wild.
Yeah, and they also have a private law firm, right? So when they're not working for the government, they are working for the family firm, who are focused primarily on personal injury. So on one side, the family is sending tens of people to long jail sentences and the death penalty, and on the other side the family is suing and getting these huge sums for their clients for personal injury cases. Perfect. And the family's business was drawn into focus in 2019 when one of the youngest, a 19-year-old son, was out on a boat with 5 or 6 other kids around his same age, extremely drunk, and hit a pylon under a bridge and ejected everyone from the boat.
Drinking on a boat is essentially running with a gun. It's the same basic danger principle. It's something doesn't need to happen, but it certainly can.
It's going to up the percentage for sure.
Yes.
So they hit this pylon. Everyone on the boat was ejected. 5 of the people came out okay with some minor injuries, and the 6th wasn't found for 7 days, and she died, unfortunately.
Jesus.
Her family. Go ahead, Mark.
That's awful.
Couldn't agree more. So her family goes on to, the cops come. There are conflicting reports as to whether or not a field sobriety test was conducted on these people, but the report notes that they were very intoxicated. So there's questions about whether or not the family's influence, played in here. The family of the victim ends up suing both the driver, the Murdaugh family, and the convenience store that sold the liquor to them, actually, which is an interesting little twist. But subsequently, the the driver of the boat, the Murdaugh family member, is arrested but is released on $50,000
And that's the 19-year-old, right?
Correct. His name is Ryan. He's arrested but released on $50,000 bail. And as he is awaiting trial, he and his mother are executed and left by the kennels on their property in South Carolina. One of them shot multiple times with a shotgun, and the other one shot multiple times with an AR-15. So it's just a bananas case.
That's just, I don't want to make light of it because it's horrible because people have died, but dog kennel, AR-15, 3 generations of prosecutors, and the execution was it was like a mob hit, wasn't it?
Yeah, according to Gary. So who would be motivated to kill the son? Well, I guess the parent of the deceased daughter seems like they'd have some motivation, but then not sure where the mom comes in.
Sure. So
why is the mom in there? Did the mom do something in some court appearance or something?
Yeah, in a further twist, the patriarch of the family dies a few days after these murders. He was apparently already pretty ill. He was in his early 80s, and he passed away. So it's a very weird story. The way you read the articles that have been written about it, it doesn't seem to cast the suspicion on the victim's family, as Adam alluded to there, but it seems to point out that over the course of these personal injury lawsuits where they were representing people, and then the prosecutor side of the family that was sending people to the death penalty, there is any number of people who might have had a problem with this family and ended up taking their vengeance.
So probably wasn't connected to the boat accident.
Most likely not, is what's suggested.
It's interesting because I've said for years, and it was not original with me, it was my father who used to say, when people would ask him, isn't it dangerous when you go into the criminal courtrooms? And don't you, representing criminals, blah, blah, blah. And Pops used to always say, no, the most dangerous court is the family law court. That's where people get shot, killed, and people go crazy. And so the fact that they did PI doesn't kind of ring a bell. But if they did family law, that's the first place I'd look. In fact, I don't even know if the case was ever solved in LA, but in LA County, there was a judge years ago who was murdered in Pomona, who was a family law judge. And there was also a lawyer who was murdered in his garage, as I remember, and he was a family law lawyer. And so I don't know if you remember, Adam. Do you remember that video of the guy circling the Van Nuys courthouse in the tree? Yeah, very good. Yeah, always family law.
Yeah, it's funny. It's because family law is sort of like construction worker, and then criminal law is sort of like fireman, and that construction is actually a more dangerous job than firemen. But no one thinks of construction as a dangerous job. They think of firemen as a dangerous job. So any kids listening, either become a fireman or a criminal attorney. You get paid better. There's more pussy, and you're essentially hailed as a hero in your community versus the construction guy or the family law.
Yeah, the old adage is that in the criminal courts, the defendants are people who made bad decisions on their best behavior. And in the family law courts, it's people who have made bad decisions on their worst behavior. So,
well, we'll keep you. It's certainly an interesting story. It didn't seem to get much traction on national news. I didn't hear anything about it.
No, it hasn't gotten much national attention. The murders were earlier this month, June 7th, I believe. So it's still.
I'd like to get somebody on next week's show to talk about this. Somebody involved. I like this story in terms of there's just so many tributaries to it, and the other one that I liked was that story down in, where was it, Gary, with the rather large guy who got unfortunately killed by his own gun behind the ear, with the woman who is the
Was that in
young
Puerto Rico?
mother.
Where was that?
I think it was in. I think that was in Belize.
Or Belize. Yeah.
Yeah. That story, she got released, and that story has gone off a cliff in terms of the traction on it. I mean, she was released on bail, and that was the end of it. You didn't hear another word about it.
All right. Let me give you a quick word about Audible. Forget last summer. That was a bust. Everyone was inside. But this summer, we're going to get some beach towels. We're going to stock up the cooler, and we're going to hit the beach. We're going to escape. Audible, the perfect summer partner. Now is the best time to do it. Prime members save 53% on your first 4 months. Download or stream an unbeatable selection of audiobooks, binge-worthy podcasts, and exclusive originals. We have Mark's book up there. We have my books up there as well. Audible members can choose one title a month. Yours to keep, by the way, forever. Plus, full access to Audible's streaming library, the Plus catalog. Streaming library, the Plus catalog. Oh, okay. Well, that's what it's called. Road trips, beach days, bike rides, or backyard barbecues, Audible is the perfect companion for summer. It's Audible, right, Gary?
That's right. Right now, for a limited time, Amazon Prime members can save 53% on 4 months of Audible. That's only $6.95 a month. Get more out of summer with Audible. To take advantage of this incredible limited time offer, go to audible.com/RD. That's audible.com/RD.
Well, our internet is down once again, so we can't search things, and I got a Coach Plus seat with my name on it going to Denver, so we'll wrap it a little bit early today. Again, tonight, I'll be in Golden, Colorado, Buffalo Rose. They added some tickets, so there might be some available. You can go to AdamCarolla.com for all my live shows, and you can check out our Reasonable Doubt podcast, YouTube.com. You can subscribe to Reasonable Doubt YouTube channel if you like as well. What do you got, Mark?
Yeah, come by the Capri Hotel, see Naya tonight, Saturday night when this drops. Go to the V Palm Springs, Elixir, or Gigi's, downtown, 10E, Engine Company 28, or at LAX, or Casa Tropicana down at the San Clemente Pier. So, and by the way, Adam, call me tomorrow.
I shall. I will do it from beautiful Golden, Colorado. So, until next time, it's Adam Carolla for Mark Garriga saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.